Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Oh, there you go. Eating anything good? Popcorn?
Popcorn. I know.
Ah,
Probably loud.
no. I just had spinach and Gruyere cheese rolls. Those were good.
Oh, yeah.
Will Brockman, Trevor Hustis. Sure, everybody gets on here. You're out in sunny California today?
I am.
Yeah.
Well, in this office, like I'm at the central office right now, but the way the lights are behind my desk, like it actually looks terrible. The light's so bright.
Oh.
I don't know who this teacher is.
What's the name?
Teacher.
Okay.
Oh. I'm betting it's Hetty. Hetty, I think your name is coming up as teacher.
Oh, okay. How do I change that?
Click on your the participants, and then over on your own next to teacher, which is you, hit more, and one of the choices is rename.
Yep, we'll do that. Yep. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
There you go.
Where are you, Bill?
I saw your ambitious budget advisory schedule there that you're going to talk to Paul about tomorrow. I was like, I guess you must be back to work.
Yeah, I'm hoping we are.
No kidding, huh?
Just discussion. Seeing none, Ms. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Julie Bruni.
Yes.
Nathan Carlo.
Aye.
Robert Deacon.
Yes.
Erica Kreutz.
Aye.
Ellen Dakotas.
Yes.
Trevor Eustace.
Yes.
Don Marian.
Yes.
James Moses.
Yes.
Arthur Payer.
Yes.
John Sargent.
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
Mia Kovacs.
Yes.
Julia Ryan.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. I'll now entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6A to discuss an employment matter.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded.
Moved by Mr. Sargent, seconded by Mr. Carlo. All those in favor, Ms. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. 1 second here. Okay. Julie Bruni.
Yes.
Nathan Carlo.
Aye.
Erica Kreutz.
Yes.
Robert Deacon.
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas.
Yes.
Trevor Eustace.
Yes.
Don Marian.
Yes.
James Moses.
Yes.
Arthur Payer.
Yes.
John Sargent.
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
Mia Kovacs.
Yes.
Julia Ryan.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Before we move into that, Mrs. Napolitano, do you have any instructions for us?
So I'm going to open a breakout room right now that just has the board, Paul, myself, and Mr. Applescene. And everyone else, you'll still be in the regular meeting and just kind of hanging out, waiting until the breakout is over. And I am going to stop recording right now so that we can send everybody to the breakout room. All good?
Great, thank you.
I think I got everybody. All right. Okay. So I'm now recording again. I've opened the door to everybody who was in the waiting room.
Are you able to tell me the names of the visitors now, the ones that have just, Susie Simmons, I see, Naomi Brown?
Let me see. Let me go down the list here. Mr. Abbott. Mr. Abbott, could you let us know your first name or rename? Is it Corey Abbott?
It's Corey.
Okay. I can't, there's no picture, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So we have Mr. Abbott. I just have to scroll down. Kim Aiken.
Yeah.
Greg Applescene, you already have.
Yeah.
Melanie Craig. Somebody's named teacher who just joined.
Ben Harris.
That's Ben Harris.
Ben
Yeah.
Harris, I need you to change your name, please.
Okay.
Okay.
And finish your dinner.
Yeah. Before you get on camera.
Craig Pendleton. Oh my goodness. They keep the order keeps changing on the list.
I know you can't. Yeah.
Naomi Brown, Susie Simmons, Taylor Boucher, Tina Plummer, and Tanya.
Yeah,
You should be able to pull it up on the participants list, and then it won't
Yeah.
shuffle.
Yeah, I think I've got
It's
most.
shuffling every time someone mutes or unmutes.
Yeah.
Or does something. So
I'm good, thank you. Sorry.
okay.
Okay, moving on. Appointment of Mr. Gregory Applescene as principal at Bonnegal High School for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Penna.
I would like to recommend Mr. Greg Applescene as the high school principal moving forward in the year 2021.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Penna. Mr. Applescene, do you have any words you'd like to say to the public?
Prior to the vote,
We can do it after if you'd like.
if I could defer till after, yes, that would be nice. Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Gregory Applescene as the Bonnegal High School principal for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Carlo, do I have a second? Who was that? I'm sorry, I can't see everyone's camera because there's so many people on here. So if you could just
Use your hand raising.
raised hand thing,
Yeah.
so I can
Yeah, great.
call on you. Mr. Williams, is that you?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Mr. Carlo, seconded by Mr. Williams. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Julie, I'm sorry.
If I was just going to tell them if everyone clicks on the participant button, you'll get the list, and down bottom you'll also have the icons to raise your hand or check yes or whatever you want to do from there.
I think we have to do roll call though. Out
No,
loud is the rules for voting. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Julie Bruni,
Yeah.
Nathan Carlo,
Yes.
Erica Croy,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
Because the others were not in executive session, am I including them in this vote or not?
Not on this motion, since
Okay.
they don't have all the information.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. It is unanimous.
Great. Okay, Mr. Applescene, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I know that was kind of a funny little moment. I wanted to defer my gratitude and my thanks to all of you, the school board, clearly everyone at the central office, the interview team, the two students that are with us tonight, Julia and Mia, for their participation as well. Everyone that was on the interview team from central office, of course, the building leadership team at the high school. I do have to give a shout out to Belfast Area High School, Ellsworth High School, and Scarborough High School. I would not be in this fortunate position had I not spent time with all of those wonderful people over the last 30 years. My family, I want to thank them. And last, my wonderful wife, Michelle, for whom is a rock for me. And I certainly would not be in this position and have the privilege and the opportunity to serve SAD 6 without her love and support these last 23 years. So thank you all.
Great, thank you very much, and welcome. We look forward to seeing what you have to do and what your plans are for our high school.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to our public comment session. Are there any members of the public who have any comments? If you do, again, you have your raised hand function down on the bottom right. If you click on participants, I'll just give anyone who wants to say anything a minute to click that button. Okay, looks like we don't have any public comment this evening, so I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Kovacs and Ms. Ryan for the student report.
I don't have too much to report out on. I guess one of the bigger things is there is still going to be a junior prom for the class of 2021. We obviously can't do it until the next school year starts because of the new regulations. So we're hoping sometime in the fall for prom. So we're going to have 2 proms, which is going to be interesting. And other than that, I don't really have a lot more else to report. Everyone's kind of just adapted to online school and has gotten used to it. I know that there's still some clubs that are trying to keep things going. The Creative Writing Club has Zoom meetings twice every week where people can come and share their writing. And the Bonnegal Theater Club has also changed. They were going to have their spring musical Into the Woods in the spring, this spring obviously, and they can't do that now. So they've moved that to next fall, and they're going to have to recast for certain roles played for seniors. But that's really all I have to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have much to talk about either. You know, everyone's adapting to online learning, like Mia said. But yeah, that's all we have for this week.
Great, thank you. Does any board members have any questions or comments for our student representatives? Seeing none, move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the April 6th, 2020 regular board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Erica.
Moved by Mrs. Kreutz. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Mrs. Dakotas. Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Yes.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Terrific, thank you. Moving on to my report. So I wanted to briefly talk with the board and pick your brains on the board reorganization process. So as you know, we always do it the first regular meeting after our June election. But this year, as I'm sure you're also aware, the election has been postponed to July 14th. So I wanted to get your thoughts as to how we should move forward with this. Do we want to delay it until after July 14th or continue with the previously scheduled in policy timeline? So if anyone has any comments on where they think we should be moving, or if they have any questions, more than welcome hearing those. Mr. Pear?
I think we should wait, continue on with what we're doing until the new people show up, because it'd be unfair if I don't get reelected and the person is there and didn't have a voice on where they wanted to be.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Are there folks that are running that are not seated members already?
Yes.
There are 2 contested elections. Leamington and Buxton both have contested elections. Mr. Deacon?
Unless there is some legal requirement, while we must do it, I think that it's appropriate to delay it, to have the new board as a whole however it may be comprised to make that determination. So I would prefer to delay it unless there is some absolute legal requirement that says that we cannot.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bruni?
So I guess my question is, because everything continues to get delayed, in the event that the elections don't happen in July, do we talk about, like, will we just continue on if this goes through the middle of next year, or do we have a time frame that we say, hey, we're going to continue on as is, but in the event that it goes past this date, then maybe we need to look at if we need to change things?
Right, and that's definitely a valid point. I mean, at this point, I know a lot of people are just taking this one day at a time. Certainly open to a discussion that we can have. You know, is there a date? At what point, if we don't have the election beyond this date, do we have reorganization and continue on forming? We can't delay it forever. I mean, it can't delay till 2021. However form that might look like. So I mean, to Mrs. Bruni's point, if the elections move past July 14th, do we want to make that the stop date and say if it moves past this point, we're going to continue ahead? Is that something that people have any thoughts on, or Mr. Deacon?
Yeah, the ancient Romans used to have a thing called intercalare, where the consuls could interrupt the calendar and stay in office forever. And I'm not advocating that we stay in office forever. And that's why I'm alluding to it may be appropriate for the chair to consult with legal counsel about the effects of prolonging terms beyond the what might have otherwise been provided in the election process, because I don't want someone to challenge any actions of the board that may be taken because of the extension of the terms. So my suggestion is partly to address those concerns, perhaps by Julie Bruni, is that that we ask the chair to consult with legal counsel to determine if extending terms beyond their otherwise point of time is legal or not, and if to what extent can we extend the terms and then delay the board leadership.
Right. So, but if you're not speaking, if you could please mute your line. We're getting some feedback here. To your point, Mr. Deacon, I know Mrs. Smith had reached out to our folks at Drummond Woodsum on that point, and they said that all people whose terms have expired remain in office until the next election. So while the term technically expires, whatever date we were supposed to do it in June, since we're not having that election, the term would now they would technically expire now July 14th. And if the governor decides to extend it further from there, then that is when ultimately the term would expire. But we can get some additional clarity on that.
So my final point then would be, I suggest that we defer selecting new board leadership until July, and then cross that bridge when we get to it, decide what do we want to do based upon the facts that we'll have in hand at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Dakotas?
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say that there was some strange pictures coming up on my computer.
Okay, is it impeding your ability to participate?
It's gone now. I don't, it was somebody's face and noises, so it's gone. That's all. I'm
okay,
sorry.
great.
Well done.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes, so I just wanted to add a caveat to the what we learned from legal counsel about terms staying in place until after the vote on July 14th. There is one member who was appointed to the board, And I'm not sure, we've actually got a question from both the town of Standish and myself to Drummond Woodsum to find out about that one person, whether they need to be reappointed in June to carry through until after the vote, or if something else has to happen. Because this is all new, it's a new circumstance, it's a special cause, they are going to have to look at that answer. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Sargent.
Well, Hetty already covered that part. But I think what we're looking is what if. We already know that the elections have been postponed a month. They maybe go another month or two. Might go to August or September. And I think that you shouldn't reorganize until you have your full board sworn in. That's my thought on that.
Okay, well thank you very much. Mrs. Kreutz?
As someone who just joined the board for the first time last year, it was definitely a little intimidating coming in and understanding the schedule. So in terms of getting people who are going to be able to participate in the different boards, if it's not the players that we have at the table now, it could be complicated if someone gets assigned to a board and then just legitimately cannot attend that particular committee. So I would support waiting until we have our new board members in place to make those changes. That being said, I'm also supportive of coming back to the table in July if plans change and we need to, as we've been talking about, change plans. I think we're nimble enough that we could steer in a different direction if we had to. But from a relative newbie perspective, it would have been fairly stressful to come in and be told where I had to be.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Mrs. Dakotas?
I agree that we should wait. I do think for the points that everyone has raised, that it would just be more organized and cohesive if we waited for the election and moved forward with all the people there.
Great. Well, thank you. Mr. Sargent, do you have any comments?
Nope, all set.
Okay, just saw your hand raised there. Wanted to make sure. Okay, well, I appreciate all your feedback. I just wanted to run that by you and see what your thoughts were. But we will wait until July, and hopefully the election goes forward on the 14th. But if not, we'll cross that bridge when it gets there. So moving on, Mr. Penna, the floor is yours for your report.
Okay, thank you. I just want to let Mr. Applescene feel like if he wants to leave, we will not be offended by that if he chooses to leave at this point. And I'll be in touch with him shortly. So thank you. So teacher resignations, as you first have in your agenda. Laurie Bond is resigning at the end of the school year, a coach at HB Emory in Steep Falls. Don Boudelier will be retiring at the end of the school year at Buxton Center. Kelly Damon is also resigning a new position out of state. Kelly Freeman, equally so, resigning a new position out of state. Sue Wolowski at the high school. It will be retiring at the end of the school year. Andrew Price is retiring his position at Buxton Center at the end of the school year. And Rick Simons, who actually retired last year, had taken a half-time English position at the high school for us this year, will be resigning at the end of the school year. And David Sakino, school counselor at the high school, is resigned at the end of the school year as well. You have a copy in your packet of the support staff, new hires and resignations as for April this year. The school nutrition department received $1,000 from the Full Plate Full Potential Grant to assist in the opening of the Hollis Elementary School as a site for serving meals during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't know, most of you probably don't know, but we are getting reimbursement for the meals feedings that we're doing with of all the feeding that we're doing during this COVID pandemic time in the district, starting from, I think the date was March 15th. From that plate forward, we had they'll reimburse it, but prior to that, Hollis Elementary was not established as a site, so we will not be reimbursed for that. So this will be helpful towards that donation during that part of the delivery of food that we're doing. But that's the only piece in there. Other than that, we will be reimbursed for those meal program. Donations, we want to thank Winter Kids for a donation of $400 and 4 sleds for participating in Edna Libby elementary school students in the Winter Kids Challenge. Funds will be used to support student activities. Thank you to Hannaford and Buxton for donating 500 brown bags to help with the distribution of meals at Buxton Center, approximately a value of $75. Thank you to the Atkinson family for a donation of $600 in memory of their father, Philip B. Atkinson Jr., to benefit the district backpack program. And thank you to the DonorsChoose.org for donations of $678.29 in outdoor experiential learning equipment to benefit outdoor education program at the Bonnegal Middle School. Thank you to Stephanie Millar for a donation of $200 to benefit the School Nutrition Angel Fund, which helps support families who are have an outstanding debt. And we want to thank you to Mark and Kathy Goodwin of Hollis for their donation of $50 to the use for the grab and go lunches provided by the district school nutrition program. Before we get to all the other items I have on my agenda to speak about, we're going to talk about as we move forward. I did want to let the board know that I have started a document on a return to school plan. I think what most notable out there is the San Diego School District has shared their plan with all the school districts around the country, and Maine has adopted that model for a format for return to school. I'm still waiting and kind of working with DOE in order to, and CDC, of course, in order to get some direction as to what that will look like. There's several documents out there that are really in-depth. I'm not sure we have to be that in-depth at this point in time, but I do need to get some clarity on what we're doing and how we're going to do it and what the protocol is going to be for the district. There are people asking about returning to work or going into the schools and doing some work. So we want to make sure that our recommendations or our plan follows CDC and Department of Education guidelines. But that is in process. So I'll just keep you updated on as we move forward. I'm also thinking about the importance of the professional development needs for the staff who may need to work remotely, as well as students who may need to access remotely moving forward in education. So Lori and I do have a meeting with our tech coaches to have an early conversation on Wednesday in a Zoom meeting to discuss. And I sent you all an email, I shared an email with you tonight that Marissa Cutter, kindergarten teacher at Edna Libby, had shared with me because her and her sister had been working on the BE Together t-shirts fundraiser for the Bonnegal backpack program. I shared the video with you that they put together, and they raised $7,520 for that program with that fundraising effort. So pretty positive and impressive stuff. And I shared that video with you so you could get a couple chuckles out of that. Good stuff, good energy, and good spirit around the district. And the rest of the items that I have to talk about will come up as we move through this agenda.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for the superintendent of schools? Mrs. Dakotas.
Yes, I just had a question about who reimbursed the school for the meals.
Dottie Janata is working on that through the state and through the federal government. So there'll be some reimbursements that she will work through. I talked with her recently as today to find out what that process was going to be. And she was working on it, and she's fine. She knows we're reimbursed for everything other than the Hollis site, which was, we had to get permission to open that site because they went with a summer meal distribution format. And so that was not on the list at that time.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments this evening? Seeing none. Moving on, approval to adjust the 2019-2020 school calendar. Mr. Penna.
Okay, so we are, you've heard, I think a lot of board members have been, people have emailed them or asked them questions. And we've worked, and of course, you know that I'm in superintendent meetings. I had been 3 times a week. We cut it down to a couple times a week. Now we're in the 1 time a week. And in those meetings, often DOE is represented. Penda will make it when she can make it. We've gotten some real clarity around what we're going to be able to do and not do in the school year, but there's a lot of open flexibility as to what we do with the school year and how we decide to close our school year. So our recommendation, pretty consistent with what everyone's doing in the Cumberland County area, is that, again, to adjustment of the calendar needs your approval. And that, so we would end all new instruction the week on June 5th for students. And then during the week of the 8th to the 12th, it differs a little bit. The high school will do some personalized remediation and connecting with students individually to help them to meet course requirements. Because as you know, the high school credits, and that's a major issue. And both Aaron and Tom are on here if you have questions about that, but they have a really good plan. The teachers are really supportive of how they're going to go out and actually try to not go out and get kids, but really take the time to really go down, and kids that are close that can get course credit to reach out to them and spend some personalized time, making sure that they have what they need in order to complete the course. The middle school is going to be doing a combination of that and what the elementary school is doing, where they're going to go out and try to help students complete missing assignments, but they'll also be doing some closure activities with their students where they haven't seen them for quite a long time. So they'll be doing a blend. And then the elementary schools will use the week of 8th to the 12th as closure activities that will include meeting with their new teachers, and they'll do like a Zoom reveal. So they have some fun activities proposed for them, but all new instruction will stop on the 5th, and then we'll wrap up, and the last day for students will be the 12th.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Mr. Pear.
The last day for teachers.
Well, the last day should be the 17th for teachers, and so we're working with that, with the association to make some decisions as to how do we make that meaningful time for everybody. So we're going to work that through with agreement with both associated, even our support staff as well.
Thank you.
Because the support staff, typically their last day would be the last student day, but the last student day wouldn't be until the 17th, and so we're working with them as well to come up with some agreement that those people, those support staff won't necessarily lose those 3 days of work. There's plenty of other things for them they can help with and do that we think we can accommodate that, but I want to work that through with the associations.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Dakotas?
I don't have a question. I'm sorry.
Okay, if you could just turn your hand raised off, please, then. Okay, Mrs. Bruni.
So I have a couple of questions, Paul. And so I think about how quickly we got our plan up and running, right? And so you had mentioned that we're doing things that are fairly consistent with Cumberland County, right? And so I've kind of heard that we were a little bit ahead of where other folks were. And I've seen some plans around like not Scarborough, but Saco and Biddeford, and they're getting done on like June 1st, and it's at least a week earlier than that. And I see that some schools are doing it where they're not doing instruction on Wednesdays. They're kind of giving the kids the opportunity to do that. And so I don't have any kids that are school age. Mine are beyond that, right? Like, as you know, I'm working and not having to get on Zoom meetings with kids all day long, and I'm ready to lose my mind. Right, so I'm just trying to think about if our team did so well to get up and running and kind of ahead of the curve before other schools did, is there a reason why we're going a little bit later, or they're getting done maybe a little bit earlier than what we're proposing?
Yep, I think philosophically, from an educational point of view, we did get up and running rather quickly, and our teachers are working really hard. And there is no real call to end earlier. I'm not sure what the discussion would be to end earlier, that it's hard, that it's challenging. I'm not sure what those conversations would be. Philosophically, I think it's really hard for me, from an educating perspective, to say, oh, we're gonna get done earlier because we started earlier, or we have plenty of things to cover. We know we're not covering material like we were in a direct instruction classroom. So even though we're going on, it does not supplant what was happening and is happening in classrooms. We very likely will be in a model similar to this in the beginning of the school year. I don't want to send a message to the district is that we're just going to take the easiest route out, or the quickest route out, because this is not doable. We are getting better with it every week. Our teachers are really, and our staffs together are working well together. I couldn't find any justification to come to the board and say we're going to end earlier. So, from an educational perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Carlo.
Thank you, Trevor. I don't have any questions, but I think this is a great opportunity for our student reps to weigh in on this conversation. This is something that particularly affects them. So I'm putting them all on the spot here. to get their input. Mia, why don't you go first?
I mean, I've talked to, because I've kind of heard a little bit about what the rest of the year was going to look like from some of my teachers, and I've talked to my other friends about it. And I think we all get that this is kind of the best way that things are going to work. And I know a lot of my friends too are kind of glad that there's going to be that time for remediation in case there, are things that still need to be fixed. I mean, I can't really provide much of an insight for younger kids because I don't have any younger siblings. But I like how the rest of the school year is going to go. Well, I mean, I prefer it if I was in regular school, but given the circumstances, I think this is a good way to do it.
I agree with Mia. June 5th is a good stopping point for further instruction, and the remediation time is something that I think everyone is going to need because there's a lot of work being put on us right now. So having that little extra time to get in more work, I think that's good. And I think ending on June 5th is good too, so that there's no rush to get through a curriculum, so that we actually learn stuff through a prolonged setting, I guess, just how in regular school it would be. So I like the June 5th end date. That's a good end date.
Yeah, so do I. I think that June 5th is a good day, and it's not like it's putting any, we've worked hard doing our work, and it's not like there is extra pressure, but I think that that's a good day. I agree with both of them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Deacon?
Yes, as we end the year, I'm somewhat concerned about ending without thinking about going forward still. And I know the superintendent has always a lot on his plate, especially these times, and I certainly don't want to micromanage how he handles things, but I'm just thinking ahead to say, are there any lessons learned or things that we need to do during the summer to better prepare for the fall? Of course, again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think some aspects of the online learning might be things that we can learn from to offer experiences on snow days, or if not, because of the continuation of the current situation that we're in. So I'm just looking for, I would hope that the superintendent and key staff are looking towards what lessons we can learn to better prepare if this continues in some form in the fall, or to apply it towards snow days or some other way, so that the summer isn't just business as usual, but we're trying to stay ahead of the game here and make sure our kids get the best possible education if we have to have some type of online program in the future. That's all I have to say, and if the superintendent wants to comment now, we can, or maybe it's something that he wants to think about and address later.
No, I could address it all now. I mean, obviously I'm thinking ahead. I'm not thinking for tomorrow. That's why I have a meeting with the technology people on Wednesday to make some plans of what we need to do for students and staff. We need to get direction from the commission. Has been very clear that the bar for the schools is going to be higher than the bar for business and for commerce. So we'll have to think about what our options are, which is why, in fact, we are making a plan and using that San Diego model to look like what it will look like. I don't think there's any question there's going to be an online format that the board's going to have to go back and review and approve. There'll be some students and staff that may be immune compromised, that may not be comfortable. We'll have all kinds of issues to deal with that we're going to want to resolve in a positive nature. I think an online format is absolutely realistic. And I think same for when we get talking about the calendar. I have very little reasons why I'll actually say we're ever going to have a snow day again. But again, that has to be board approved. That we'll move forward with this sort of a format in the future. But those are all things on the Apollo 13 COVID-19 spreadsheet that I'm working with. We got to bring them back. And how we do that is going to have to be with a lot of creativity and intelligence, with a team around me that's very supportive of how do we do this and make sure we meet the needs of everybody. not only our students are really important, but our staff deliver the services. So we have to work collaboratively.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Kreutz.
I do have
I
a
was just
follow-up, if I may, a brief follow-up.
Go ahead, Mr. Deacon.
Okay, similarly, with the business side, we don't know how the budget is going to work out in the future. There are a lot of news reports how Maine might take a big hit financially, and this can affect the state's ability to do lots of things, including support education. And again, I know that Mr. Brockman is always well ahead of a lot of these things, but I'm just worried that you know, whatever we can do during the summer to try and think through how the budget is going to be affecting us in the year ahead, because a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, about what the state is going to do to support education, as well as the ability of the taxpayers to maintain their support that they've had in the past. So again, just not looking for an answer right now, just sharing that it's a concern. I'm sure that Mr. Brockman is thinking about it, but I just hope that at some point, maybe we can get some insight from him and his staff about how the budget is going to unfold in the future and things that we have to think about because of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Mr. Penna or Mr. Brockman have any response to that?
I mean, I think obviously Mr. Brockman is always thinking 3 steps ahead of a normal person. And it lays a lot of groundwork for our future. We have a meeting tomorrow to talk about his ideas and his plans about what that's going to look like. And I'm sure we'll then bring that forward respectfully to the right places to ensure that we have a plan moving forward and the board can support it. Yeah, we're thinking about all of those same things. That I've talked to 2 selectmen, 2 different town selectmen last week, shared that information with Mr. Brockman, who's well aware of it, and their concerns that they have to ability for property taxes and other things coming through. And we're going to have to be reflective and sensitive to those same needs in our community. So I think we will meet tomorrow and have some of those conversations, discussions, and then I think we'll be ready to launch a plan to roll out what budgeting will look like moving forward.
I could just add that later in the agenda, I'll present a little bit of a tentative plan for the current budget process. I won't get into what next year's process will look like, but I will give you an idea of what some of the roadblocks will be for us to make sure that we get a budget approved for the current fiscal year.
Thank you. And I'm glad that we have such a competent leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eustace,
Yes, Mr. Moses?
just had my hand up quite a while, just if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I have. Mrs. Kreutz is one ahead of you.
So just as a parent, I would just like to say, a parent of elementary school kids, I would just like to say that if the administration thought that it would make sense in the light of the stress that we were all going through to end school earlier, I would have been in supportive of that. But I actually kind of appreciate that we're continuing through. I know one of the struggles I go through on a personal level is encouraging the children to complete their work, that this is real school. Just because I'm not Mrs. Richardson or Mrs. Evans, that doesn't mean that the lessons that are coming through are not good lessons, that the teachers haven't prepared this for nothing. So I think that there's a certain amount of recognition that what we are doing in this virtual environment is still school. And I'm just supportive of the calendar continuing through. I like the idea of kind of a fun week for the kids in elementary levels and an opportunity for remediation for the older students. But it's just a recognition that what we are doing is school. This hasn't just been a big joke, and to the point that others made, that if this comes back around in September, we need people to take it just as seriously as we are now.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Moses?
A question and a comment, question for Paul. What's the plan for summer school, so to speak?
Good question. We're not sure. We're waiting for guidance from DOE on that as to what we can and can't do. I mean, I think based on what we know now, we may be able to bring in some parts of the population as long as we can maintain those guidelines. So that's sort of what we're moving on right at this point. I actually talked with Jen Donlin last week about maybe reaching out, and Kelly, to reach out to some of the families that might be some of our highest need students that we would probably be bringing into the building, to say what the comfort level is of them doing so. So we're trying to gather some little information as to what the people will respond to if we're going to set up a plan for that. Beyond that, we're not sure. We know it's going to have to look different. It's not going to look the same as it has. Leamington has always stayed in their building and had quite a group up there. We know that 50 is not going to, we're going to have to change that up a little bit. And the programming at Buxton Center will also have to be adjusted to meet the criteria. So
there could be, in terms of the lessons we're learning, I think we're learning lessons almost every day. So it's a matter of how you fold what we learn week after week after week as you get into the end of this month, into June, into July. So there'd be a lot more learning going on each day. And I'm sure those lessons will be implemented into how we think about the future. And the summer programming could have a budget impact, positive or negative, particularly if you're looking at trying to get smaller groups into the buildings or in the programs and or remote learning. Then the issue will be how we capture those students that really need the credit recovery or the remediation or the help to make up those courses they may not have been successful at the secondary level. And my biggest concern, and I assume that administration is carefully looking at it, is the issue of equity around the impact of all of this on our most marginalized students in our poorer communities. I think what this has done is surfaced sometimes the inequity we see in those that are socioeconomically deprived, and also going forward, the wellness of our students and their families, and wellness of our staff. So it's a lot to think about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Mrs. Bruni.
I think I have more of a question. Like, as we've been going through this, right, like this is obviously, I don't even know how many weeks it's been going on. Like, what has been the, I don't know if attention span, like, or the participation, right? Like, do we find that the number of students that are logging on to Zoom calls or engaging, have we seen any difference from when we started to where we are today?
Well, I mean, Ben's on, he can talk about what the middle school. I think we definitely, and Aaron's on and Tom's on. So I think you can ask the schools more specifically to see. I think participation in my experiences, I mean, I think I see that it's always challenging. I mean, I think that, you know, from what I see from the elementary classrooms and the ones I've gone into, and the teachers, I mean, I think they're always working on keeping kids engaged in order to be involved. And I think over time, there are kids that have fallen off and not participate quite as regularly, and they need to be, again, encouraged to participate. And I think that that's part of our charge ahead, that we have to make this important and a commitment to education. But Ben, Aaron, Tom, if you guys want to jump in, please feel free to anything that you have seen at your buildings.
I guess I'll jump in first. I'll just say at the middle school, we've seen a decline, especially since April vacation. The first couple of weeks, things were really exciting for kids and they were really trying. And not that they're not trying now, but it's getting harder to keep them engaged.
Yeah, I agree. It's for us, it's been since April vacation. We had a strong start, but the numbers have kind of increased of kids not participating. But you know, we're making phone calls, we're following up with emails. It ebbs and flows. I think kids are doing work, but not necessarily participating in online, direct kind of active online behavior.
I think it's also important to know that when we advertise that we went to pass insufficient evidence, which we can talk about with you guys a little bit after this,
we did have a handful of more marginalized kids show back up. We've lost some general across the way, but there have been a handful of kids that we hadn't seen until we made that shift, and they magically reappeared. So.
And what was it, Aaron, that made them?
The shift to knowing that they were going to be graded on learning progression and on a pass insufficient evidence instead of on a ABC and having to do 3s or above on all their summative assessments. I think we saw a shift in some kids who were like, I can't do this online, who went, oh, okay, maybe this is doable online. So we did have a handful of kids come back.
Okay.
Trevor? I can't raise my hand because I'm the host, but
Okay.
I also wanted to let you guys know that when we were having the conversations about when we were going to end school, when we were going to stop new instruction, how much remediation time, we had conversations about how the population of kids participating would probably wane as the month went on. And we decided that wasn't a reason to end the year earlier, because there are still students who will be, just because every student isn't participating doesn't mean that you're not there teaching the ones who are still participating. And so that was a sort of a reason to not cut off too early, just because some kids might lose interest or lose motivation.
Right, thank you. Mr. Pear?
I had one of those kids that drifted and got pulled back, so I appreciate that.
Right, thank you. Mrs. Bruni?
Yeah, I just have just another question, and not anything that needs to be, but I just think about, as we go further and we think about like remediation and some of the kids that need to be reached out or have, is there an option to maybe think about, do we do a reduced, is there like a half day that students aren't necessarily logging on with their teachers, but maybe teachers are doing remediation with students to help with that if there are some that, hey, between the 5th and the 12th, that's not necessarily going to get them over the hump, or just some type of like a break for folks, if you will, right? So that teachers are not working the overtime, but more so give them an opportunity to reach out to some of those students, or just know that, hey, I still have schoolwork to do. It's on me to do it, but not necessarily logging on to Zooms.
Well, I think that's the high school plan specifically. I mean, I think that's exactly what they're targeting, that the students who are doing their work and can do and passing their final assignments independently will be off and doing it. Those teachers know who those other students are they have to go after and reach out more personalized with, and that's what the plan is to do, exactly.
But just the high school, Paul?
Well, the middle school is blending that program. That's a high school plan because they're course credits. That's the difference everywhere else. The middle school is a blended plan where they're going to chase some kids as well to get some of that done. But Ben can speak to his issue, but the high school is different than all the other levels in that regard of what needs to get done for course completion. And not that the others aren't doing it, they're just doing that in a different way. Closure of a course at an elementary level is a little different than closure of a course at the high school. And that's why the middle school is talking about a little bit blended model for those kids who can get that work done and complete it. They're going to go after those kids and do it. The kids that have not been engaging are not going to engage for the last week in school either. Is that fair to say, Ben, about what you're doing?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I mean, I followed up with half a dozen students today. I was able to get a hold of 2 parents. That's the hardest part, is trying to track down the parents and get them to answer the phone. Partly I'm not calling, I'm just calling from my school cell phone number and trying to get a hold of people, and they don't answer for whatever reason. So.
And our school resource officer is visiting all the homes of kids that we can't get a hold of. So we have a spreadsheet going, and every week, anybody who we still haven't been able to reach that we're concerned about, people who aren't picking up the phone, kids who aren't engaging. If we don't have any contact and we don't know what's going on at the house, we have Deputy Bradway every week has a day that he is going out and knocking on doors and checking on people for us and helping them re-engage.
To Julie's point earlier, though, I will say that I don't think we're going to have, it's all based on speculation, but I can't imagine many of the students who aren't showing up are going to be available for remediation either.
Okay, well, moving on, Mr. Penna, do you need board approval for this plan?
Yeah, it's an adjustment to the calendar.
Okay. Well, then I will entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's plan as presented.
So moved. Nathan.
Moved by Mr. Carlo. Do I have a second?
I'll second Mr. Deacon.
Seconded by Mr. Deacon. Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas, Ellen Dakotas, okay,
Mrs. Dakotas? Looks like you're on
She's
mute.
muted. She's muted. Yeah.
Oh, I unmuted her. Oh,
Okay.
Oh, thank you. No, it said it went off. My internet was not working.
okay, so Ellen Dakotas,
she froze up again.
okay, so am I moving on or what would you like?
If you just call the rest of the roll and see if she comes back on.
Sure. Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent, John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas.
Lori, can you try on
I keep
She's-
pushing the button. All right.
mic and see if she might go, because she looks like she's not frozen right now.
Yeah, but it's not letting me unmute her.
Oh,
Talking about me.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there you are.
I
Oh,
keep,
good.
Were you voting yes or no on the motion, Ellen?
I'm sorry. I said yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you.
The motion is unanimous.
Great. Moving on, approval to grant the Bonnegal High School principal the flexibility to waive graduation requirements for students in the class of 2020 whose access to learning was impeded due to COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see here in your agenda, the draft resolution from the superintendent is here, and I'll turn it over to him if he has any comments he'd like to make.
Yeah, no, I think we have Aaron and Tom on just to explain anything, to make sure people understand that this is a unique situation and unique times. And I think the high school has a really good plan for a little bit of flexibility. Not that they're not trying to impose or change policies on graduation requirements, but they do recognize the need for some flexibility in that. And they're here joining us tonight so they can share that information with you so you can make a informed decision.
Okay, great. Mr. McGuire, Mr. Noonan, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Go ahead, Aaron, and I'll piggyback. Well, first of all, we dropped it back. We're looking at it instead of 24 credits to graduate. We looked at a trimester where you can earn up to 2.5 credits per trimester. So we dropped that down to 21.5. That was kind of the starting point. And then from there, we took a look at what the state requirements are for the core content areas of English, math, social studies, science. And then we looked at what SAD 6 requires of our students and where are those areas where we could afford to cut back. Aaron, do you remember off the top of your head what subjects those were?
So English is our big one when we're looking at seniors. Generally, English is the one that we have not met. So our seniors do have to complete 4 years of English. So that is, even if I have a senior or we have a senior that's in dire need right now, no matter what the COVID hesitation or hurdle is, we need to get through English because that is a state requirement. The state requires 2 years of the other 3 major science, math, and social studies. Specifically, social studies has to include U.S. history here in the state of Maine. they require 1 full year's worth or 1 credit of art and 1 credit of health. Actually, I think they may have gotten rid of the health and PE one, but we're not.
Right.
So they have, those pieces have to be met no matter what the circumstances. I think the point of what we are putting forward to you is there are students who have some pretty significant circumstances or situations in which we think very much of our alternative ed students where we already have them in a specific setting for alternative ed. We are trying to meet their needs in a completely different way. And now we think that these kiddos are going to be able to self-survive online in some pretty tough situations. We think about kids who are VOC kids pretty heavily. We have a lot of VOC kids who were banking on getting their certification by being present at VOC, whose certification is now not doable because they can't get their clinical hours. So I've talked to a couple of boys in particular who are apprenticeshipping right now because their career field will be an essential workplace and they're desperate for staff. And so they find themselves working 50 hours a week right now, trying to work through apprenticeship to make up the certification that they're not going to be able to get.
Right.
And
Right.
so, but they're struggling to balance the last 2 classes they have on school at the same time. So looking specifically in this, it's an individual scenario. It's not a
Oh,
It's not a one size fits all. She'll come back. She'll have to
Yeah.
reset. So there's an application that we would create. They would have to fill it out, explain the hardship scenario that the COVID shutdown has presented to them, and then they would have to present that to Mike Johnson, the principal, for approval. I would add also that this gives us some flexibility with electives. If we can eliminate an elective class and it's not going to interfere with the larger scheme of things, and they demonstrate the hardships that they have, which are legitimate, then we would waive also the requirements for the elective as well.
And the primary piece to this is we're talking about kids who were on track on March 15th.
Correct. Yeah.
That if they were in our world, we were going to get them across the line without question, without doubt, without extreme dragging. They were there, and this is what has really caused them to now be at risk.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Deacon?
I'd like to thank the staff for all that they're doing to be creative and mindful of the extraordinary times and the pressures on students and everything that's got to be considered. And I appreciate that. For our aspect as a board, I hope that in some form, when this is completed, that those involved can, with respect to obviously the privacy of all of the students, might be able to come back to the board to tell us something about the things that you confronted and had to address and the types of adjustments you made, so that we can be mindful that we're ensuring as much as possible that our students get a quality education, and that we can be prepared in the future if in some form we have to continue to confront this, so that we get some feedback from the practical experience that you're going through, so that we can be mindful of all of this to manage to do a better job if possible in the future. I don't want to micromanage. I just would like to say that it would be helpful to get some information about all of this to make sure we give the best possible education to our students. And again, I'm thankful for all of your efforts to reach out and work with students and make adjustments where appropriate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for our administrative team this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that the board accept the resolution as presented.
I move, Erica.
Thank you, Mrs. Kreutz. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
I'm sorry, was that you, Mrs. Dakotas?
Yes, it was. I'm sorry. Yep.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
Don Moran,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams. I'm sorry, Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
The motion is unanimous.
Great, thank you. So you'll notice in the packet that the resolution's there. There is a signature page. So I was thinking that due to the virtual mode we're all in these days, that I would sign it on behalf of the board and Paul would sign it, attesting that. But Mrs. Smith wanted me to suggest that if individual board members would like to sign the resolution, we would need a majority of the board, but she will be at central office on Thursday if they wanted to schedule a time to sign that. If that's something you'd like to do, I encourage you to reach out to Mrs. Smith and we can go forward from there. If not, I will sign it on behalf of the board, attesting that this vote took place. That resolution will be on file with the superintendent's office. Okay, moving on here, approval of a plan to pay the 2019-2020 school year spring coaches. Mr. Penna?
Yep. So again, working with area, let me find my notes, area superintendents, and listening to other things going, different pay scales going around the area. There are some definitely different ones that Mr. Curtis is on. So Eric can speak to the issue if you want to hear from him as well. But my recommendation is going to be fairly consistent with what we've talked about in some of the areas around us. Overall, the plan would be varsity coaches who start early and stay late on their work because you can't start a spring sport in the spring and actually have a successful program. So they have done a lot of planning prior to the spring season that got canceled. Some made trips to leave the state for practices and all those other things and competitions that they typically do. And that we felt that they put some time in and they continue to put time in. A lot of them that set up Google Classrooms and they're meeting with students, which again, for many of our students or many students in general, that's a big connection with the coach and it's a positive connection. And so their efforts we feel should be recognized and not go unnoticed. And so our recommendation is that we'd pay varsity coaches 33% of their stipend for work that they have completed and continue to do with the students, and that all sub-varsity coaching programs would receive 20%. Those are all the JV programs at the high school and the middle school programs. We'd pay them at 20% of their stipend as an act primarily of goodwill. Many of them haven't started most of those seasons don't start until they actually have the athletes. But as an act of goodwill and thanks for their commitment to our students, we feel it's the right thing to do is to offer them and pay them 20% of their current stipend, the stipend that they would have earned this spring. And Mr. Curtis, if you want to jump in and say anything, certainly you're on here, so you can.
No, I mean, I agree with everything you said. Our coaches do work very hard and they're making some great connections. If you're on Facebook and everything else, I mean, our track coaches have got a virtual marathon going with all kinds of community people and stuff. So they're doing some really nice things, even though we were unfortunate and we're not able to have a season this spring. So.
Okay, Ms. Kovacs.
I just wanted to add that, even though we're not physically able to have our spring sports, I know a lot of coaches are still doing things. Like I play tennis as my spring sport, and my coach, Mr. Pelletier, he started a Google Classroom, and we've been doing like weekly challenges where you can win a prize. Like this week, we're doing a miles challenge where whoever walks or runs the most miles gets an Amazon or Dunkin' Donuts gift card, and if anyone walks or runs 12 miles, then you get a can of tennis balls. And we've been doing a bunch of stuff like that. So even though we're not physically still able to play our sport, you know, I know a lot of coaches are still trying to coach.
Great. Well, thank you. Mrs. Bruni. I believe you're muted, Mrs. Bruni.
To put my hand up and take my hand down, I got to remember to unmute. So I know, Paul, that you would mention that it's, you know, similar to what other districts are doing. And so I don't, is 30, so I'm going to ask two questions, so don't cut me off, Trevor. So my first question is 33% the most that any other districts is doing? And my second question or point is I know that there's been a lot of discussion around our coaches and the amount of time that's gone by since all coaches have had any sort of increase. And so I just want to make sure that we're thinking like not just consistently what are we doing with what other districts are doing, but if there's an opportunity for us to demonstrate the appreciation, does it have to be 33% because that's what everybody else is doing? Or is there any room for discussion of could that be any more than that, knowing that we had budgeted for it and knowing the conversations that are happening with us, trying to think about increasing stipends for coaches overall?
Well, I mean, it's coming, the board can do anything it wants to do. I can't, but the board can.
And
So,
Paul, do you want me to share what some of the other SMA schools
yeah,
are?
you can certainly, yeah.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about Julie's first question. You know, Marshwood is part, I'm just talking about SMA schools in our conference. Marshwood is doing 100% for their coaches because that's what, you know, the coaches made a commitment. So that's the high end. Gorham next door is doing 80% for varsity and then 50 for the other sub varsity and 30 for middle school. And then on the low end of that, Massabesic is doing 0, I believe is what
That's correct.
their final one was.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a wide range from 0 to 100. I think Biddeford did 50 for all of their coaches. Kennebunk, I believe, just approved, I think it was 75%. I'd have to look back at my notes to be sure, but those are the schools that have, in Scarborough, I think did 33%. Those are the ones that have voted something in and it has been approved by their school boards. The others are still working on it. Like I know Wyndham is looking at 70%, but that has not been voted on. So there's a wide range and it does go from 0 to 100. So.
Okay. Do I have to raise my hand again?
Oh, you have the floor.
So I'm not really sure, like, for me, I definitely think that it should be, from my own opinion, should be higher than the 33% of what folks are doing, right? Because as you mentioned, it doesn't start in the fall, it doesn't start in the spring with coaches doing work with their students. Probably it starts sooner than maybe it's supposed to, I don't know, based on, you know, the MPA guidelines. But for me, just knowing the conversations that we've had, and we have a lot of coaches that have had a lot of dedication to us over the years. And I listened to Mia talk about her tennis coach. My guess is the money that's buying the gift cards for Dunkin' Donuts or the money that's buying those tennis balls is probably coming out of that coach's pocket, right? And so he's doing the right thing by our students. And as we talk about budgets and, you know, what's happening with the economy, when we go to budget season and say, hey, we want to give all of our coaches an increase or percentage of their pay, will that ultimately be able to happen? And so I think about the budget dollars that we've had, the budget dollars that we've already kind of put aside for this. To me, I'd like to be able to show our coaches that we do appreciate them. We know that they work above and beyond. I don't know if I have the magic number for that, but I also would think about if you're saying, Paul, hey, we might not even be coming back to school in person in the fall, obviously that has an impact on athletics. And so, you know, is it that we would do this? How do we determine, is it a different conversation that has to happen in the fall depending on when it starts, right? But for me, I don't think that we should pay the coaches any less than, you know, 50 to 75% of their pay from a varsity standpoint.
Now, did you want to put that in the form of a motion, Mrs. Bruni?
Can I make a comment first?
Who was that?
Mr. Sargent.
Just go ahead.
I'd like to play the devil's advocate here. Coming from a municipal area, and when you're looking at budgets, we're going to have a lot of taxpayers and a lot of citizens who have had their world turned upside down and been unemployed. There are people that have been out of work for 2 months. And when you come into a budget season and you go to a budget referendum to get this approved, if you're paying coaches and they're not coaching, even if they're working behind the scenes, the general citizens don't see that. And that would be a lightning rod for them. And I think it's going to be a difficult budget to get through because there are going to be so many people that have had terrific financial hardships. I think they should be recognized. I would go with what Paul has proposed. And, you know, in the fall, if things are different, we're back to full-time sports, then maybe put a bonus in then. But make sure you get the budget approved first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pear.
Yeah, I think Mr. Penna worked really hard on this, and I would go with what he had to suggest.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
How do I raise my hand?
Go ahead, Mrs. Bruni.
So I guess that you asked, am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. My hand
Nope.
is unraised. So back to your comment, I would like to make a motion that we pay the coaches 50% from a varsity standpoint for the spring season.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Trevor, I will second it. Nathan.
Can you read that?
Okay,
No, it's too late.
Capital one?
No, I'm good. I'll let you start when I can.
Mr. Marian,
What?
did you have a comment or thought I heard you say something?
I didn't say anything, but I would like to, though. Now that
Okay.
well, yeah, I totally agree with Mr. Sargent. I'm really concerned about what's happening statewide and what's happening to the state budget and how much cut we might be looking at. Any place that we can show the people that we're sympathetic to what's going on, I think we need to do that. So I would be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to pay our varsity coaches at a 50% rate for the spring season. Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
No.
Ellen Dakotas,
No.
Trevor Hustis,
No.
Don Marian,
No.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
No.
John Sargent,
No.
Jeffrey Williams,
No.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion has failed. You have 4 yes and 7 no.
Okay, thank you. So back to the proposal. I'd entertain a motion to accept the superintendent's plan as presented. Mr. Williams?
I'll make that motion to accept as presented by Mr. Penna.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Pear. All those in favor, Ms. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Yes, just give me one second.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I have the motion. Thank you. Okay. So let me just. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
Your motion has passed unanimously.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Williams, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to ask you to read the percentages prior to the vote, but that's fine.
Oh, sorry about that. It was 33% for varsity, 20% for junior varsity and middle school. Is that correct, Mr. Penna?
That's
those
correct.
numbers right?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
And-
Okay,
and
so we've been going.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I was going to tell you that even it's not in the proposal because because it really doesn't impact the board in any way, but all of the I think that Mia spoke a little bit about I think it was Mia, but talked a little bit about student council, some of the work that's still going on. All the clubs that are going, Mrs. Curtis has a spreadsheet running. He knows who's actually doing activities and following up with their activities and continuing their work. And so those will be paid accordingly based on the work that they've done or not if they haven't done any work. We're keeping a spreadsheet of what that looks like. So we'll work that through with the associations, with Mr. Curtis and myself. I have a spreadsheet running. So just that that's for the activities part, which really doesn't impact the board anyway. They either did their activity or they didn't do their activity, and they're either going to get full payment or they're going to get a percentage of what they did. It's like the plays that they may have done 80% of the work but not finished it. They'll get 80% of their salary stipend. So just to let you know that part is also being worked through.
Okay, thank you. We've been going at this for a little over an hour and 40 minutes now. So we're going to have a 5-minute break so people can get up, stretch their legs, use the facilities if they need to. So we'll get back here around 7:47, 7:48.
I'm pausing the recording until we come back.
If you are a board member in the meeting, if you could please turn your camera on, just so we know you're here. Hi, Art. Okay, Mr. Maria and Mrs. Bruni, are you back? If you're speaking, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. Okay. So, Mr. Williams, you have your hand raised. Do you have a comment? Okay, the hand is gone. So we are going to get back going. See, everyone should be back here. Moving on to authorization for the superintendent of schools to sign a contract with the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office to hire a resource officer at Bonnegal High School for the 2020-2021 school year. And this contract is included in your meeting packet this evening. I'll turn it over to Mr. Penna for any comments he may have.
Thank you. What I'd like to have for consideration is that given in the spirit of what we just discussed, concerns that we have financially, budgetarily going forward, equally with the concerns that people have around general security. And you know that part of my plan this year was to hire a consultant and do some audits and kind of look at really what we're doing and how we're going to spend our money moving forward. But that's probably not going to be happening. We obviously have to look at all budget items and make some decisions. But this contract, as you look at it, without having last year's in front of you, is $4,636 and some change more than was last year contract. And I thought that was a pretty significant increase. Obviously, that has to do with contracted for the employee. That most of these compensation benefits for him within whatever his benefits package is, as well as salary, as I've looked at this contract in comparison to the last one. And in the last one, that had gone up also several $1,000s, again, for additional costs. So this is a significant cost to the district. I know it's important. I know it's necessary. And I know but we have to start thinking about what that all means to what resources we have in our schools to provide for us, for a safety, for security, for programming, and all the other things that we need to do with our dollars that we have. So what I'm going to propose, and what I propose with the Sheriff's Department, had some talks with Captain Stewart, who supervises the SRO, and what I'd like to propose in this budget, if you approve this contract, is to use the SRO 2 days a week to be determined as we work through it, but to assign the SRO 2 days a week to the middle school and 3 days a week to the high school. Part of the thinking there is that I know that, as you all know, there's been a lot of push to have a middle school, and I was saying that I don't think we can afford that in the budget, but I think before we do anything, before you decide what you want to afford in your budget or not, I thought it was prudent to put a consultant in place for a minimal cost to say, where should we be putting our energies and our dollars, and how should we be spending them? So then you have an informed decision to make as to whether you want SRO or other things you might want to do around the district, because security is a concern for every building, not just 1 or 2 buildings. But I think that as an interim step, I think with the increased costs, which kind of caught me a little bit by surprise, given the current climate of the economy and the importance of having a school resource officer on campus, on grounds, I think it'd be a prudent, my recommendation would be, if you approve this contract as is, I will work with the details with the captain and with the police chief in Buxton to ensure that we can smoothly transition the SRO 2 days a week to the middle school and work through that. So that's my proposal if you approve this particular contract.
Great, thank you. Mr. Deacon.
Yes, thank you. I know in the past it's been raised about.
Excuse me, Mr. Deacon.
I know in the past.
Go ahead.
You hear me?
You just turned on your camera, so I just want to make sure you
okay.
turned that on, but you're good.
I know in the past we've discussed the issue of county lines and the middle school being predominantly in York County as opposed to Cumberland County. And so I assume the superintendent has addressed this issue on a continuing basis so that the resource officer can operate it at the middle school, even though it's technically in York County. That's point number one. The second point I want to ask about is the involvement of the school resource officer in non-campus activities such as wellness checks or the current equivalent of truancy if the student is not participating in online classes. To what extent, if any, would the resource officer be involved in activities like that? Thank you.
He's currently involved in those activities. Laurie is running a spreadsheet. Schools at all schools are contributing to that spreadsheet of concerns, and he's doing home visits. Well, moving forward, he's done some of those in the past. That's not primarily where we want him visible and available at school as much as possible. And on occasion, when he needs to accompany someone on a home visit, then that might be appropriate, then that's what he'll do. I mean, that'll be worked out with the principals and the particular needs of their school is what they need. As far as the deputized, this particular SRO is deputized in York County as well. and can serve in both, and that was important. We did that last year because there are times you need to visit the middle school. But we want to, if this is approved, we want to work collaboratively with Buxton PD, who that's predominantly their territory, and we don't want to step on toes and disrespect anybody and anyone's authority. So we're going to work collaboratively with them on what type of calls and when will we call Buxton PD in, and when will he, obviously in an emergency security situation, the SRO would take charge. But other than that, I think there are other ways we can work through this so that it's a collaborative environment and not a contentious one. And he can serve a lot of great purposes at the middle school as a mentor, as an officer-friendly type environment, going in and building relationships with students that ultimately will make it to the high school. I think he can do a lot of work. And I think we have to work out the details of other things, being respectful of Buxton PD and their dominance of the particular area, and making sure that we're not taking calls from them that they would normally have gotten. So we'll have to work that through if your board approves this.
Thank you.
Great. Do we have any more questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract as presented by the superintendent.
Motion.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
will
Fair. Do I have a
approve.
second?
Robert Deacon approves second.
Great, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll? Mrs. Smith?
Hang on.
Yep.
All right. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
John Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams, Jeff Williams,
Yes.
okay. Mia Kovac,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
The motion is unanimous.
Great, thank you. Moving on, approval of board members to serve as representatives on search committees and/or interview teams for the 2020-2021 school year. This is a routine annual approval to allow the board to serve as members of interview committees. I'll entertain a motion to approve board members serving on said committees.
Make a
I
motion.
make the motion. Art.
Moved by Mr. Sargent. Do I have a second?
Nathan seconds that.
Seconded by Mr. Carlo. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
John Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
Motion was unanimous.
Great, thank you. Approval to pay board members for serving on search committees and/or interview teams during the 2020-2021 school year. Again, this is an annual approval, authorizes payment to board members who serve on these committees at the $15 per meeting rate. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sargent. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Dakotas. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Kreutz.
I'm just curious what the rationale is for paying for this particular committee versus like an advisory committee versus I don't know, other committees?
Board members do get paid for all advisory committees, all committee work, board meetings. This is to expand on that for other work that board members do. Board meetings and committee work, I believe, is included in state statute, that they have to be paid for that at a rate between like $10 and $25. The board and the voters decided at $15, however many years ago, for our board members, and the board can expand that to include other work the board does, such as interview and search committees, to recognize the work that they do.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Smith, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Yes.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
No.
Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
So the motion has passed 10-1.
Great, thank you. Approval of contract renewals. You'll see here on your agenda, you'll have the first year probationary to second year probationary contract status beginning with next school year, as well as the second year probationary to third year probationary and third year probationary to continuing contract status. Again, this is a regular annual approval that the board needs to give to move these educators on to the next year in their contract if they've just started out with us. And Mr. Penna, if you have any comments you'd like to add?
I don't. I just want to let you know that all of these employees have been vetted and evaluated, of course, through the principals, and all those recommendations come through the administration before they get it to my desk. So.
Great, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to accept the approval of contract renewals.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sargent. Do I have a second?
Seconded, Erica.
Seconded by Mrs. Kreutz. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Smith, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yes.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
John Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
I'm not sure about the rest on voting for employment issues.
I'd say to include them.
Okay.
According to my recollection, all other student representatives have been included in years past on this bill.
Okay. Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
The vote's unanimous.
Great, thank you. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Pear for the Finance Facilities Committee report of April 13th, 2020.
Okay, so we talked about the facilities, the cleaning was ongoing and it was going very well. We talked about the septic system and the various timelines. It looks like we're going to be doing that in the fall, as long as everything gets approved. We talked about the budget and what we'd like to delay it, and Mr. Brockman's going to talk more about that. We talked about the food program that we were doing, and we were worried about reimbursement, but evidently we're going to get some, so that's very good. And then we closed the meeting. And that's it. The bills are being paid and we're on budget.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for the Finance and Facilities Committee? Seeing none, moving on to approval to suspend the 2020-2021 budget development process, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Brockman.
Thank you. First, I want to say I'm glad to be back. I wish the situation were a little bit different, but we have a lot of work to do on getting a budget approved by the district voters. And generally, during a budget year, most of the heavy lifting on the budget occurs in the months of March, April, and May. And this year, we really have the problem of having to deal with the uncertainty of how we move forward. They're really under the guidelines based on the governor's plan for restarting the economy, which establishes 4 gradual stages for reopening. We're not really able to do much face-to-face until June. I'm going to share a document that hopefully you've all received today, but I'll go over it for the public so that they can see tentatively what I would be recommending, how we move forward with the budget process. Can you all see this schedule?
Yes, we can. Or I can anyway.
Stage 1 of the governor's proposal, contemplates that there's a continued prohibition on gatherings of more than 10 people. And it still encourages people to work from home if they can. So what I'm proposing initially during the month of May is that we begin the process, but we really are going to have to limit our activities to one meeting that I'm proposing on May 28th. That will be a Zoom meeting. Now that occurs during stage 1 of the governor's recommended budget. Stage 2 begins in June. And now the prohibition on gatherings is increased to 50 people, which means that we can start having face-to-face meetings with the Budget Advisory Committee. What I'm proposing is that we schedule during the month of June most of our heavy lifting. Now, I realize that this is a tentative plan, and this could change almost daily, but I'm hoping that we will be back to the point where we can have people involved. Our budget process is a little bit more involved than a lot of other districts. We depend on the Budget Advisory Committee to meet and really vet the budget prior to the superintendent submitting the budget to the school board. This allows us a chance to meet with the Budget Advisory Committee on June 4th, June 11th, June 18th, and June 25th. And on the 25th is the completion of a recommended budget that will be forwarded to the school board on June 29th. Now, stage 3 of the governor's proposal maintains the prohibition of gatherings of 50 or more, and it still says that at-risk employees should stay home where possible. The board needs to begin their review. In their review, once they've received the budget, they need to receive that completed budget at least 7 days before they meet to debate or to review it. We're proposing that Monday, June 6th, the board begins budget review. And on Monday, July 13th, and I meant July 6th, July 13th, the board completes the budget review, approves and signs warrants for the district budget meeting and the budget validation referendum. The district budget meeting would occur on Thursday, July 30th. It would be held at the Bonnegal High School gym, and that is a new location for this year. And the reason that we're holding it there is that gym is air conditioned now, and in the end of July, we may have some kind of a hot weather. The actual budget validation referendum would be on Tuesday, August 11th at the polling places. And then the board would need to meet to verify the budget vote and to sign assessment warrants. The reason that I really want to try to get the budget validation referendum to be completed before the end of August is that the towns commit taxes generally either in August or September. If we don't have a completed approved budget by that date, and we don't have any chance to get one approved before the town actually votes to commit their taxes, the taxes will be committed at the previous year's rates, which means that it would be a level funded budget, which would be almost impossible for us to deal with. But so I'm really trying to speed up the whole timeline as much as I can in order to make it possible for the towns to commit their taxes on a reasonable schedule. Of course, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, and it could change. And that's why this is only a tentative proposal, and it may look different, but based on the information that we have now, we have the right to delay our budget beyond the end of the fiscal year. And we will begin the new fiscal year operating on the same budget that was approved by the district budget committee last year. And we will continue on that budget until a new budget is voted and approved by the budget validation referendum process. So what is really important, I think, is for us to make sure that we, or the best that we can make sure, that the budget gets approved prior to the time that the towns need to commit their taxes. And that's why I'm recommending that we establish as a tentative budget development schedule the following dates. Any questions?
Looks good.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Brockman? Mr. Moran?
Thank you, Trevor. So, Mr. Brockman, when the vote is taken at each individual town, who's going to pay for bringing that vote to bear? The budget development referendum is actually going to be paid for by the towns. There's no possible way for us to meet timelines that would allow us to have the budget a referendum vote on July 14th. We just, it's not possible for us to be able to complete the budget review process and meet the timelines for posting warrants and making sure that annual reports are delivered. So we don't have any opportunity to have our budget validation referendum vote on July 14th, which is the date for the primary election, which would have been on June 9th, but the governor canceled that and moved it forward to the 14th. So I guess the towns will have to absorb some of the cost. Generally, they bill us for things like ballot clerks and some of those expenses. So we do pick up a share of that.
Yeah, I understand that and I can appreciate that. It's going to create a burden for the towns, no question about that, to have to hold a special election. And most of them are going to approve their budgets when they go to the ballot in July, and they won't have incorporated in their budgets the cost of putting on this special vote. So perhaps we need to make sure that each town understands that there should be some expenses coming forward when we have to bring this to a vote.
I think that's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring the tentative schedule to the board so that we could share the dates with the towns so that they would know when things were going to occur.
Okay, thank you. I figured you must have it covered. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deacon.
The meeting that takes place at the high school is something that we are required to do. Each year we determine if we're going to do it in the future, but we've already decided that we will adopt that process. So we can't not do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so is there any way to, since we must hold that meeting and it's going to be in person, the 50-person limit still applies?
We're hoping that maybe by into August, which is really part of stage 4 of her plan, which is to be determined, that possibly things will change enough so that the 50 person limit may be removed by that time. I don't know if that's the case, but we really can't push it much later and be able to meet timelines for warrants being passed without extending into the month of September, which may be too late for towns to take into consideration our new budget before they commit their taxes. So that is one of the problems. Generally, in recent years, we haven't had more than 50 people, but I think what we would have to do if we have more than 50 people, we would have to separate the people into different areas and be able to do enough social distancing to make it sort of like 2 bodies of people and not have more than 50 in one congregation.
Is it possible to do any of that by written absentee ballot as opposed to all in person?
No, it's not a written ballot meeting. It's a town meeting style where people gather and vote.
I know that you're going to make it work the best way possible, and I just hope that it does work out. If the budget proves contentious, it might stimulate higher attendance, and that's something that would need to be thought about in terms of your potential social distancing or satellite aspects about how to address that.
That is true.
I don't have all the questions or solutions to all of that, but I know that you will be thinking about it and trying to do the best things possible. For the vote that takes place in August, there's no other election taking place, correct?
That's correct.
Can voters would be able to vote by mail in that election? Is that correct?
They would.
Okay, and so that might be a way to diminish the need for ballot clerks if people vote in advance. But there's still a need for people to count the mail ballots once they're sent in. It's a difficult time, and I appreciate that we have you back on our team, working with us, trying to make this work out the best possible way. I don't see it easy, no matter how it's done. It's not a favorable set of circumstances, but we'll just have to muddle our way through it. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Deacon. Does anyone else have any comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the plan as presented.
Motion.
So moved.
Moved by, was that you, Mr. Carlo?
Yes.
If you're going to make a motion, please come back on camera so we can see you. Moved by Mr. Carlo. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Sargent. All those in favor, Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
I will. Julie Bruni.
Yeah.
Nathan Carlo.
Aye.
Erica Kreutz.
Yes.
Robert Deacon.
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas.
Yes.
Trevor Hustis.
Yes.
John Marian.
Yes.
James Moses.
Yes.
Arthur Payer.
Yes.
John Sargent.
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
Mia Kovacs.
Yes.
Julia Ryan.
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Terrific, thank you. I'll turn the floor over to Mrs. Dakotas for the Policy Committee report of April 27th.
Thank you. Yes, we met and discussed the policy committee's evaluation of the superintendent for his participation in our meetings this year. And that was the purpose of the meeting.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the Policy Committee? Seeing none, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Moses for the Negotiations Committee report of April 8th, 14th, and 22nd.
We met with the support personnel, bus drivers, maintenance workers, custodians. We have another meeting coming up tomorrow night. I think we're getting close to settling that agreement. Just a couple more points to work through. So hopefully it'll be productive tomorrow night. We've met April 14th with the Saco Valley Teachers Association in our first meeting, and we will meet again with them on May 12th. And that is the end of that report.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the Negotiations Committee? Seeing none, moving on to our final item here. Executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6A to conduct the evaluation of the superintendent in accordance to policy code CBI evaluation of the superintendent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sargent. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dakotas. Mrs. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Julie Bruni.
Yes.
Nathan Carlo.
Aye.
Erica Kreutz.
Yes.
Robert Deacon.
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis,
Yes.
John Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes.
Jeffrey Williams,
Yes.
Mia Kovacs,
Yes.
Julia Ryan,
Yes.
Sarah Tracy.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Great, thank you. See you in the breakout room.
So you guys are all set up in the breakout room, so you can head right in there. I have a quick question. Where'd Trevor go?
He left. Are we coming back on camera?
Well, that was my question before everybody went. Hold on.
Okay, so it looks like we're waiting for another person.
There's a couple people coming in. I'm not supposed to be in this breakout, but I just wanted to ask you guys, are you coming back on camera after this breakout session?
We do have one more thing we need to adjourn. We need to vote to adjourn.
Right.
So I believe we do need to come back out into the public
Okay. All right, you want to?
camera.
All right. But okay, so I'm going to stop recording now and then leave the room, and then you guys will, when you're done, just come back to the regular meeting.
Yes, sounds good.
You're excited, Lori. That's the good. I love it.
Good. We can all go to Florida. That's good.
You guys missed some great chat, I'll tell you.
Okay.
All right, we're recording.
Oh no! Wait a minute. I gotta get Rich back.
Oh,
Okay.
you want me to stop? We're now
Go
back
ahead.
in session. We're recording.
Great, thank you. So we have two more things on our agenda. Upcoming Board of Directors meetings and workshops. Tuesday, May 5th, Negotiations Committee meeting at 5 o'clock. Tuesday, May 12th, Negotiations Committee meeting at 5 o'clock. Thursday, May 14th, Finance Facilities meeting at 4. Monday, May 18th, Policy Committee meeting at 4:30. Regular Board meeting at 6. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Art.
Moved by Mr. Pear. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Sargent. Mrs. Smith, if you please call the roll.
Certainly. Julie Bruni,
Yeah.
Nathan Carlo,
Aye.
Erica Kreutz,
Yes.
Robert Deacon,
Yes.
Ellen Dakotas,
Yes.
Trevor Hustis. Trevor? Okay. Don Marian,
Yes.
James Moses,
Please. Yes.
Arthur Payer,
Yes.
John Sargent,
Yes, please.
Jeffrey Williams.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.